welcome to the Be The Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson and I'm here to bring you the best minds in small business and entrepreneurship. I want to provide you with actionable advice and help you take the next step in your business journey. I'm here to literally help you to be the push you need. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Be The Push podcast. My name's Jack, if you don't know me, and I'm here to interview some of the best minds in the business game. On this episode, it's no exception. I have a great conversation with a man by the name of Trez West, who's very knowledgeable about the startup and entrepreneurial space. We talk about a range of things from investors, how to get investment, some of the pain points investors themselves have, how to write a business plan. We talk about accelerators, the lean startup methodology, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. It's chock-a-block full of useful, practical advice. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. So today we're here with Trez West. Trez, how are you doing today?
I'm very, very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm quite good. For those who don't know Trez, he's the program coordinator for iLab Accelerator here in Brisbane, Australia. He's also managed the Bond University Business Accelerator on the beautiful Gold Coast. He now runs a digital agency and remains heavily invested in the startup scene. Before we get to that, Trez, I'd like to just go back in time a little bit. I understand that you spent a bit of time in Europe. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Okay. So I left Australia in 2001 as an IT professional. I landed in London at the end of the tech boom. I spent 3 years there sort of working my way up the corporate ladder in IT, ended up being an IT manager for an accountancy firm there. At the end of my tenure, I came back to Australia for 9 months, worked for a massive insurance company, saved a lot of money, went back to Holland for the next 5 years, ended up working in a biotech company and again in a renewable energy company.
No, amazing. So where did you grow up?
I was born in South Africa.
Okay.
Yep. Left there when I was 5, came over to Australia. I won't tell you when, long time ago.
Okay, sure.
So I grew up in Melbourne, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm a Victorian too myself.
Awesome. Whereabouts?
Country Victoria.
Okay.
Have you heard of Yarrawonga?
I have.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'm
Not
impressed. No, fair enough. I don't blame you. Cool. So you grew up in Melbourne. When did you know that were you entrepreneurial as a kid or as a teenager?
Not really as a kid, but certainly as a young man, let's say. I went out on my own back in, this is showing my age now. Let's just say a long time ago. And I started consulting as a first and second level IT support person. I did the NEIS course, the New Enterprise Incentive Scheme, way back then. It was incredibly difficult. So I thought the best way to learn would actually be on someone else's dime. So I went and joined a help desk, a first level support help desk, and sort of worked my way up the corporate ladder and just actually stayed there for my whole career. And it was only until I got back into my law degree in 2009 that a couple of the stars aligned and it triggered that entrepreneurial spirit again.
Cool. So the NEIS program, is that still around? I understand that's a government initiative, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
As far as I understand, it's still around.
Yep.
I actually did it again in 2012 with a different business venture.
Sure.
Same principles applied though.
Mm-hmm. Do you recommend that as who should consider applying for that or going?
Sure.
Being part of that?
So, as far as I understand, if it is still the same, the NEIS program would be really good for startups. Oh, hang on. I should be very specific with my language here. It'd be really good for a business that is entering a well-established, well-known market with existing business models. So, for example, a hairdresser, a cafe, a law firm, someone who would benefit greatly from writing a business plan.
Sure.
But it won't really be that beneficial for someone who is building a startup, let's say, which is a completely different beast.
Sure. Okay, that's really interesting. So what did you get out of it yourself when you went through it?
The actual process of writing a 70-page business plan.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah. Allowed me to learn the intricacies of my business and flip the business model around in ways that I never even thought of before. It taught me a lot about cash flow and 3 to 5 year forecasts and so on, which I had no idea about in the beginning. So that was beneficial.
And is that imperative? I hate to admit it. Do I hate to admit it? No, I'm going to admit it anyway. But I've never written a business plan.
Yeah.
I find that planning too far ahead and trying to assume too many things are going to turn out in a certain way, I find that very challenging. What's your take on that?
Yep. Business plan, really good for well-established businesses and lets you understand or allows you to understand your business really, really well. For example, a hairdressing business. Yep. If you write a business plan for a startup, complete waste of time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it has to have some level of existing validation and predictability already built into the.
Yep, absolutely.
What it does.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So the niche plan, I'll put that in the show notes as the niche scheme, is it, or whatever it is. I'll put it into the show notes. I have heard of it before, but I don't know a whole lot about it. But I'll put it in the show notes for people to look into if they want. Let's move on to what your work that you do with accelerators. I understand. So you work with iLab Accelerator at the moment, and you've worked with the Bond Business Accelerator. Firstly, what is an accelerator?
What is an accelerator? That is a really, really good question. It's basically a 12-week program that allows you to accelerate your business idea.
Sure.
It's fundamentally, I suppose, aimed at startups, not really the traditional business ideas per se. The values that a lot of the accelerator programs offer would be things like the mentorship. There's the swap of equity for capital some of the time. There's a certain rigor and certain structure. There's education, and there's quite often a pitch night at the end where you present your business plan and your pitch to a room full of investors.
Sure. Okay. How would you relate that to, contrast that to, say, formal education, for example? So you've got your 12-week, let's say, for example, accelerator versus maybe a business course. What do you have an opinion on what will actually help you as an entrepreneur more?
Oh, man, you're asking me some really, really difficult questions here because...
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, okay, because, right, like you said, I'm associated with Bond University.
Sure.
I'm associated with iLab. But I've also been in the startup ecosystem for 2 years, right? 24/7, 365. And I've seen all the pain points.
Yep.
And I'm questioning a lot of what already exists out there.
Yep.
Now, what Bond University does, it's actually a 12-week accelerator program, but it's backed up by significant academic rigor, right? So you've got, a double whammy there. You've got this very nimble approach to the accelerator with this really, really solid education. Plus there's a $5,000 prize and this incredible network. So it's all sort of there. Yeah. iLab is a different beast. Externally focused, $20,000. The education is a little bit looser, but the value of the network is significantly higher, I think, than Bond University. They're different product offerings. So,
I mean, I'm just so dirty on formal education because I did a pharmacy degree myself,
right? And
I always had a bit of, I suppose, that business spirit in me. I always wanted to start a business, but I went through a 4-year course and did 4 weeks of practical, actually on-the-job work.
Right.
And I found that that didn't even prepare me for the job, let alone let alone to start a business. And they did have business subjects in the course.
Right. Okay.
But then I get out and, I do start a business and God, I just found no overlap at all. Like you come out with these theories in your head, I find, and then you go to implement them and you're like, oh, everything I imagined, everything I read in that textbook, when it comes to actually, making that happen in a real world scenario, no, it doesn't
make
add
sense.
up. Yeah.
Okay. So let's compare the old school way of building businesses and being taught versus the new way versus the different level of education that's needed when your business is further down the track. Okay, so we'll start at the end first. When you're a startup, what you need to do is
sorry to cut you off there. Can we just define startup before?
Yep. Sure. So a startup is a temporary organisation in search of a scalable and repeatable business model in an environment of extreme uncertainty.
Okay.
Yep. So in that environment, you need something like the lean startup methodology where you build, measure, and learn on a very, very rapid cycle, like daily, weekly, the sprints where you actually build something, an MVP, a minimum viable product, you get it out to market, you speak to your customers, you learn very, very quickly, you get that information, and you iterate. Yep. That's what's needed in the startup phase of a business. That's what's been taught nowadays. Once you've progressed past the startup phase of your business through the ADESI's cycle, and you actually start getting processes, procedures, efficiencies, you start measuring things more formally, that's when you need something more like an MBA. That's when you put in a management team and you're out of that startup ecosystem. That's where formal education becomes a lot more relevant. Yep.
So you're a fan of MBAs? You, for some people, that's a worthy investment, you'd say?
I can't speak to the worthiness of the investment,
sure.
Let's say, but I think there's an absolute need for that level of skill in certain businesses.
Sure.
In a startup, no. That's more likely to hinder your progress than it is to actually help it.
Sure. So it sounds like your take is that if you're looking to get into sort of an established corporate, you think that business, that formal training will help you to get there with an MBA or whatnot. But if you are looking to do more of your startup and something that hasn't necessarily been done before, it's not going to help. You've got to get out there and testing like a crazy man.
Absolutely.
Or woman.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. 100%. Yep.
Cool. So you touched on the lean startup methodology there. I know that you're a big fan of that. So let's talk about that for a while. Why lean startup?
Why lean startup?
Yep.
It completely flips the script on how businesses are traditionally built. So I'll give you the old school way of building businesses.
Yep.
So think 2001 tech boom. Yep. So typically what used to happen is some smart boffin came up with an idea. They went out, they raised a lick of capital, like we're talking millions. Yep. Went into stealth mode and then, built something over the course of 2 years and then had this crazy launch party and never spoke to a customer, and then there was no one there. Yep. And all of a sudden, 6 months down the track, the company doesn't exist anymore. There's $6 million down the tube.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. Lean startup is, how can we build, measure, and learn? How can we validate our hypothesis as quickly as humanly possible?
Yep.
How can we speak to as many customers to validate what we are actually building is exactly what they want and will pay for? Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's very scientific, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So going way back, what happened was NASA had this launch readiness tool, and it was a 9-step tool NASA, you can't get any more scientific than that,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
So, they had this launch readiness tool, and then some bunch of smart guys kind of went, yeah, that kind of works, and it harmonizes everyone across business to actually start speaking the same language across this broad spectrum of business complexity. So they got that tool and they turned it into the investment readiness tool, and that's what's being used right now, which is based on that scientific model from NASA.
Yep, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and just to give you more context to that, I think the U.S. Air Force used it. The Department of Defense used it. So big players are using exactly the same structure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've always been a man of science, so I love that I can apply that to business. But I do see it as just an ongoing experiment, really, or an ongoing number of experiments. I mean, you have your hypothesis, but it's just a hypothesis. You can't get too wrapped up in that. Past that, it's not a fact yet. There's no proof. It's in your head.
Yep.
You've got to actually, proposition someone and say, give me some money for this. And,
Absolutely.
And until then, it's just something floating around in your head.
It's just an idea. Just an idea.
But I was one of those people that really overvalued ideas, Trez. And I think there's a lot of them around, that really think that they're sitting on this idea for 18 months and that means something.
Do you know what? I feel like charging people like $1,000 every time they come up to me and say, I've got this really great idea. Wow. Because in reality, can I swear?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, I don't give a shit about your idea. I do not care. What I care about is the problem that you're trying to solve or the benefit that you are trying to provide to a particular customer segment.
Sure.
Yep. That's what I care about and your ability to execute that.
Right. So that's really interesting. Is there messaging that will come to you from someone, like someone will approach you and talk to you about they're looking to start a business or get involved in a startup? And is there some phrases that come across to you as red flags that no way in hell will that ever work because of the way you're talking? Yes.
There is a consistent... okay. To give you context, I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of startups.
Yep.
And there are people out there in the ecosystem who come to me and go, Trez, I've got this great idea. And they start speaking. And if anyone turns around and says, nobody else is doing it, massive red flag. Huge red flag.
Why is that?
Because there is somebody. My immediate statement or response to that is I guarantee you there are at least 50 other businesses out there doing exactly what you're doing right now. You just haven't looked hard enough. Yep. On the other side of the scale is not really red flag, but when people come up to me and say, Trez, I've identified this really interesting problem in this particular market. I'm like, okay, you have my attention for 5 minutes.
Yep.
Please tell me what the problem is.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. This person has learnt the lingo. And as soon as they start talking about hypothesis and validation and product market fit and the lean startup methodology, and if they have actually gone out and spoken to customers and turn around and say, well, I've spoken to 50 customers and I validated this, I've invalidated that, 50% of them said this, 75% of them said that, I'm like, what do you need from me? And when do you need it?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Well, I think I'd like to go through a case study then at the moment. I'll talk about my first epic failure of a business, and it was this whole concept of you think you're onto something. You know, I just read the 4-Hour Workweek. I was like, yep, this is what I'm after. Perfect.
It's a good lifestyle.
Yeah. And I was like, but I don't, I couldn't think of an idea. There is a whole section in the book, and I really like the book, by the way, but there's a whole section in the book about validation.
Yep.
I wasn't that interested in that part. I wanted to let's just get this out there, right, and sell and make our millions.
Yeah, you weren't interested in the most important part of the book.
No, just everything else was okay, but that part...
it's too hard.
Yeah. So I made this product called Mastering Charisma. It was an information product, thinking that, everyone wants to be charismatic, and, under the assumption... I'm not even that charismatic myself, but who cares, right? Credibility is not... Not important. So I made this product. It took 3 months. I got it professionally recorded. I had, a voiceover, all this stuff. launched it to crickets, if you could even call it launching it. And I think one of the fatal mistakes I make that I still see around a little bit is when people say their market's everyone. And that's what I said. And that's, the very first thing I did was, the launch was a product to everyone that I wasn't, I didn't have any credibility. I didn't know if there was a need. I just thought there was, and I was convinced.
Yep.
How do we help people not to have to go through that? Because I think it's very common.
Okay, so how do we stop people building products? So going into quote unquote stealth mode for 3 months, throwing a bunch of money at that, and then launching into crickets and assuming that everyone's going to be your customer.
Yeah, who wouldn't want it?
Yeah, right. That's like saying I'm going to build the next best mousetrap, and if everyone in China just buys one for $1, I'm going to be a billionaire. Right? Yeah. That's the classic analogy that we all use, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
How do we stop people doing that? Right. So I've been doing a lot of customer development with one of my startups that I'm doing right now. And the insight that I'm getting is that education above and beyond everything else is key. Yep. I would highly encourage everyone to learn and understand the Lean Startup methodology, the business model canvas, the value proposition canvas. Yep.
Where would we find all these?
Online.
Okay. Yep. Just Google and you'll be right.
Yep. Cool. Yep. I'm going to say something right now.
And please do.
Whoever's listening is not going to appreciate the value of what I'm saying, which is something that, because they don't know what they don't know. But customer discovery and customer validation and customer interviews is by far and away the most important thing that you will ever do in your business.
Sure.
Period. By a long shot.
Yep. That's who you're serving.
Yep. Before you put pen to paper, before you write a line of code, validate your customer. Go and speak to as many people you think might buy your product and get as much insight as you possibly can from that specific customer segment.
That can be quite hard to do, for someone who's not, doesn't see themselves as very outgoing. What are some ways you've seen people actually get in touch with these potential customers and talk to them? Like, I mean, I suppose for myself, I'd assume, who's going to want to talk to me? Like, they're not getting anything out of it.
Sure.
Why would they care? I'm just
okay. Cool. So I've got exactly the same fear. Let's say. And there's this sort of imposter syndrome that I've heard a lot of people talk about as well. It's like, who am I to be doing this kind of stuff?
Sure.
I'll use myself as an example and the customer segments that I'm speaking to right now. I'm speaking to very specifically founders that have raised or are trying to raise capital. All right, that's one customer segment. The other customer segment are investors, right up and down the value chain there. So I've actually had conversations with venture capital firms. Their minimum buy-in is 10 mil.
Right. Yeah.
And on the higher end of scale, I've spoken to a late stage PE where their minimum buy-in is like 150 mil. Like they're doing massive infrastructure and property projects. Right.
Yep.
And my question is, who am I to go and speak to these guys? Right.
Sure. Yeah.
I just tap my network. I'm like,
okay.
Yep. I picked up the phone, grew a pair and just said, this is what I'm doing. This is the problem I'm solving. Could I please fly down to Melbourne and have a half an hour conversation with you?
Right.
Yeah. So they said, yep, sounds really interesting, really appealing. The first thing I did was tap my network.
Okay. And did you get an introduction then, or did you? Are these people you already know, or is it someone who introduced you to the people you need to talk to?
Yeah, so the first thing you do, the easiest way to do it is to tap your immediate network, friends, family, cohort, whoever you can get your hands on. And part of the validation process is at the end of the interview, you're going to ask for some of their reputation, right?
Okay,
so
sure.
If you've clearly identified their pain points and it's something that they think that they will buy, or they think that somebody else would benefit greatly from that, and you actually ask for an introduction and they give it to you, that's like, okay, cool, this is validation. Somebody else is putting their credibility on the line to introduce me to one of the people that they value and respect, right? So that's how it goes. That's how it flows on. And you just make sure you just don't stuff that up.
Right, yeah. And there is a lot of that helping hand type of ethos, I suppose you'd call it, in the startup community.
Massive.
Yeah. So if you're not part of it, anyone listening, you got to get part of that, because most people are happy to help.
Absolutely. Yep.
What about if I was wanting to make a product for lawyers, and I'll use my own specific situation. I mean, I don't know a lawyer. I can't think of any lawyer at all.
I have a law degree.
Right. Okay.
I went to Bond Uni, so
right, that's a bad example. All right, terrible example.
I'm not a lawyer, but I do have a law degree. So.
Yeah, so you'd be able to help me. But okay, so let's use something else like oh God, now I'm trying to think of. Let's assume I don't know any dentists.
Okay.
But I want to make a product for a dentist.
Sure.
You're saying, so go straight to my immediate network would be a great way to start.
Absolutely.
Beyond that, if I'm not getting any traction there, can you approach these type of people cold?
100%.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there ways that you would suggest people go about that?
Pick up, it's going to sound really simple.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone.
Right.
If that doesn't work, walk straight into their office and bug the hell out of them until they throw you out of the building.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
We make it so complicated for ourselves, don't we, sometimes?
Yep. And the biggest issue that I hear and see, and I've experienced this as well, is people are like really scared. They're like, oh my God, customer development, I have to speak to people I don't know and all this kind of stuff. After about the 5th or 6th iteration, like it will suck your first 5-10 times you do it, right?
Yep.
But what I've noticed is once you actually learn the techniques of interviewing and you start getting this incredible level of insight, from these people, I want to call it an addiction. You get excited about talking to the next person because you are getting this level of insight that no one else in the industry is getting because nobody else is talking to these people. And these people are loving you for it. They're like, holy crap, this is really good. Thanks for taking the time to actually listen to my problem. Let me know if I can help you out or introduce you to anyone. Let me know if when your product's ready, I want to have a look at it. That's the kind of thing. And you're like, that's the feedback I'm getting. I'm like, awesome. I can't wait to build this. Yep. I can't wait to get it in front of you. I can't wait to speak to the next 10 people.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so you're almost saying it's a little bit flattering.
I won't say flattering because that's just an ego thing, and I'm not personally my ego is not personally invested in the product that I'm building. So,
sure. Yeah.
I'm hoping that.
Oh, I meant for the recipient though, so the person you're going to ask, to interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not for the interviewer. No. Interviewee. I'm referring to
interviewee. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
If you get to a point where you find this product market fit, when you clearly identify these number 1, 2, 3 pain points in a person's life that they're experiencing on a daily habit, then, and if you actually have a product that can solve that problem for them, they are more than happy to talk to you.
Sure. So is there a way to how would I know about what questions to ask? I mean, I go in there with my theory about I'm going to help dentists with, I don't know. God, I don't know enough about dentistry.
Yep. Okay.
Do you have a take on how to structure these questions, how to phrase these questions?
Sure. So are you going to be giving out my email address, contact details at the end of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you like. So there's what I did, and this was something just personally for me, is I went to Google and went customer development. Yep.
Yep.
And I read every single blog post on the front page, and I turned that into a process and extracted all the questions I possibly could, and then actually put that into the linear process of the customer development lifecycle.
Right. Okay.
So I have all of those questions.
Right.
The second thing is there's a book called Lean Customer Development.
Sure.
It's part of the Lean Startup series.
Yep.
And in that are some great overall questions. So, if anyone wants to contact me, I need to actually write a blog about customer development that I promised Advanced Queensland.
Yep.
So when that becomes available, I'm happy to, share that with everyone.
Cool. Because I think it is a good point, because it is so easy for someone to say, oh, yeah, that sounds great, cool, and it can be very different from actually parting with real world money for your service or product, Like, I mean, it is, I think money, my favourite part about money is I think it cuts out a lot of bullshit.
Oh, 100%.
You might throw away $20 on something that you really didn't want to, but a lot of people won't. A lot of people will, because you actually are sacrificing something when you're handing over money, right?
Absolutely. It becomes very real at that point.
So I can say, oh, great idea, Trez. And then you go, oh, cool, here's what I'm selling, $30, thanks. And I'll be like, I
don't have my wallet with me.
Oh, geez, I need that for a beer.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to say, that sounds great. And it can be so different from actually whether the person would actually buy what you have to offer.
Yeah. So you're talking about further validation in the customer development cycle. So was it time, reputation, and money are the three major drivers for validation. So we've already spoken about reputation. So if we do customer development, you introduce me to one of your friends, that's your reputation on the line. If I say, thanks for your time right now, I'm going to go and do some more work, can we catch up in a month, and continue the conversation. If what I'm doing is actually solving your problem, you'd be more than happy to give up the most valuable resource that you currently have, which is another 30 minutes of your time. And the other one is, of course, money. That's the real, the real deal there.
Right. So, but we're not really validating it as part of this customer development. You're not really validating the money part yet, are you?
Typically not. You're going through the customer discovery cycle first, then the customer validation, then you're going through the solution discovery, and then the solution validation. So in the customer discovery area, hard to ask for money when you don't have a product, but it's possible, right? You could have a landing page and a capture form up there and say, look, can you just sign up here, $5 early adopter kind of deal, and people might be happy to do that.
Do you advise doing that?
Sure. The more validation you can get, the better off.
The more resources you can suck out of someone, time, reputation, money, the more
validation you have, right? Absolutely. So if you get 10 people that give you their time, money, and $5, you're onto something. So, but if all of them just give you like an introduction and say, really not interested, you might want to rethink exactly your customer segment or your product market fit or your value proposition.
Okay. Can that be me? Let's say I'm doing this. I'm going through this customer discovery and validation phase. Can that be me describing it poorly, or do you think that if I've got a general grasp of the English language, I should get a feel from those interviews whether there's anything to look at there at all?
What do you mean when you say you're describing something?
Okay, so if I'm explaining to you what problem I'm trying to solve, let's say I'm trying to solve back pain for. We'll stick with the dentist. I don't know if dentists have back pain, but let's assume they do. And I describe it in a way that I don't know. I can solve the pain in your back, or I could have said, this is a bad example, but are you sick of?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, sure.
Right, so this is exactly what I do when I am speaking to startups and investors. So I turn around and say, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. We've got about half an hour. The problem, I read the Startup Oz's Crossroads 2015 report. Yep. In that report, it said that access to early stage capital is one of the biggest pain points in the startup ecosystem. That's the problem I'm trying to solve. And they go, oh, right, that's a really big problem. And I'm like, yep, I know. Okay. What I'd really like to do is hear your story and just start at the beginning.
Sure.
And I will guide you through. I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions. Tell me everything you can. Don't be scared. And this is completely private and confidential. It's not going to go anywhere. And off they go. And I start typing away furiously, and just asking a lot of open-ended questions, trying to dig into that insight. Yep.
Is it really important to use the terms that they use when if you say let's 5 or 10 interviews down the track, you've got if these same terms keep coming up in conversation, a good idea to start using them a little bit later on in your discovery, and then you're sort of getting used to that messaging, the right messaging for that
absolutely
market.
Yeah. So if let's say you've had 10 customer interviews, and you keep on hearing this same pain point over and over and over again, what I'd like to do is I like to let people just continue to talk and talk and talk, and then I'll actually circle back and say, 5 minutes ago you mentioned this. Can you tell me more about that? Because I don't want to immediately and deliberately jump on a particular pain point and sort of raise a flag is that's something that I'm immediately interested in, and it changes the dynamics of the interview process. Because when you're interviewing someone, they're trying to figure out what you want them to tell you, if that makes sense. Yeah, and that's not what you want. It's going to skew.
Yeah.
It's going to skew the data that you collect.
Yeah.
So you want it to be as natural as humanly possible.
So interesting. I've just thought about a better example in the time that since I had a woeful attempt before, in the terms of let's say you're selling social media marketing or something like that for that's your solution. So if someone said to me, I'll build you a Facebook following and this type of thing and post for you on Facebook, that's not that's a solution. That's not really okay, cool. That doesn't really speak to my pain. That's a solution without a problem.
Yep.
But typically what I'm trying to do as a marketer is grow revenue, build reputation. So those are the actual key phrases I need to be saying during those sales conversations. And that's the point I was trying to make before.
Run that by me again, because you shouldn't be mentioning any kind of solution in customer discovery.
Good point, yeah.
And customer validation.
Yeah,
right?
gotcha.
Your primary purpose is to find out their pain points and the needs that they want fulfilled. Right. So if you start using your lingo that's associated with your technical problem, you're doing it wrong. Yeah.
And will you actually shut someone down if they come to you and say, hey, Trez, this is what I'm trying to solve, and they say, this is how I'm trying to solve it? Do you say, wait, let's just really focus on the problem and really flesh that problem out before we even bother with the solution?
100%. That's what the customer discovery and customer validation is all about. Typically what happens is somebody comes up with an idea, and that's where it starts, and they sort of think, I could probably solve this, right? So they have some kind of technical solution. What they need to do is park that and never talk about it again, right? Go out, do a lot of customer discovery and validate whether it's actually a significant enough pain point to the point where if you do build it, people are going to pay you money for. So you do the customer discovery, then the customer validation. And then once you've got that data, you go, okay, cool. I've got all this inside. I've got this data. I've got all of these potential customers, right? And their email addresses. And they're like, yeah. If you build something like that, I'm actually going to give you money. Like, can you give me $5 now as a down payment? And then you scramble and you build that thing as fast as humanly possible. And then you get back to them and say, I've built it. Tell me if it's exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. So when you come across these people as part of, it could be a part of Accelerator, just in the ecosystem in general, how do you know, what indicates to you that someone's going to be successful as a founder or as part of a founding team?
Oh man, that's $1 million question,
Yeah.
right? How do I know that they're going to be successful? How do you define a success?
Good question. Okay,
Right.
so how let's say success is a sustainable business.
Okay.
Building a sustainable business.
How do I know that they're going to be successful?
Mm.
Okay, so I look at the individual.
Yep.
Entrepreneurial or academic theory suggests that there are certain traits that entrepreneurs have that can be measured.
Right.
Yep. So certain behavioural traits.
Right.
So if they have those traits and to what degree they actually exhibit those, that's a reasonable indication.
What are those traits?
Have a look at entrepreneurial effectuation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's stuff like who you are, what you know, and what you have is fundamentally what drives entrepreneurial effectuation nowadays.
Right.
There's things like bird in the hand is one of the principles. Opportunistic tendencies is another.
Yep.
So that's how entrepreneurs think nowadays.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
So those traits, also the level of education and experience, deep industry knowledge goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The right market at the right time is really, like, I would say that is one of the most important things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been validated by a couple of other fairly significant and authoritative figures out there in the startup ecosystem. It's not necessarily about your idea. It's not the team. It's about the right market at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
So that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah. Okay. Entrepreneurs born or built?
Built. Guarantee
Right.
it.
Wow.
Yeah. Not born.
Okay.
No. There are certain things you can teach people to be. You can teach people entrepreneurial theory without question. 100%.
Yep.
Right? There is stuff that you can't teach a person, but you can make that information available to them. For example, persistence, perseverance, grit, fortitude, those kind of things, and actually how to deal with risk and uncertainty. Like ideally, entrepreneurship is about risk mitigation. You know, not this sort of maverick approach to entrepreneurship, right? You know, putting it all on the line. It's like that's making big bets is part of the ecosystem, but mitigating those risks in equal measure is also part of entrepreneurship, which people just don't get. So,
well, otherwise it's just gambling, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
Right.
Yeah,
right. So you can't teach grit, you can't teach perseverance, you know, or how to stomach risk. But you can turn around and say, look, if you want to build a business, these are the soft skills, the personal leadership skills that you are going to need to become successful, to lead a team. Yep.
All right. Well, what about leaders? Are leaders born or built?
Oh, I don't know much about leadership. I think, again, there is a certain level of academic rigor and knowledge. There's a significant body of knowledge that comes around leadership, right? Most notably out of the military. Let's say you can go, you know, those guys, they put you through the cookie cutter process, and you come out with a couple of, you know, bronze pips on your shoulders, and you're a leader, right? Yep. So there is that, but depending on how good of a leader you are, it's a different story.
Yeah, it's a concept that's baffled me, to be honest, for a long time. I always thought of leadership probably how I thought of business before I started any of it. Easy. Oh, just, you know, start it up and sell some stuff and, you know, lead some people around. And then you get in the game, and it doesn't quite work like that. There's a lot to it. And it is something that, you know, I do intend to ask a lot of the guests on the podcast about leadership, because it's just it's really important.
I'll give you some weird insight in my
Please
life.
Please do.
So never once have I considered myself a leader in any capacity in the startup ecosystem.
Right.
Yep. I just love doing what I do, and help a bunch of people out. And I keep on getting endorsed on LinkedIn for leadership. I'm like, what are these people doing? Why are they doing that? Endorse me for entrepreneurship and startup, but I don't get this leadership thing, right?
Yeah.
And then just through the course of conversations, it's like, oh, you're really influential. You're a leader in the startup ecosystem, right? And I'm like, am I really? I'm like, I didn't intend to be that. That wasn't part of my life goals. It just kind of evolves through the I don't know, through what you do and how you present yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so that's really interesting. Okay, so why entrepreneurship, Trez? Why, being part of this game is sometimes like just, strapping yourself up to the wall and getting whipped with the cat o' nine tails, over and over again. Okay. Well, there you go. But it's I suppose sexy at the moment. To be part of this.
Yeah.
We got the social network out and, did you see that? And he made $1 billion and you get in there, you're part of the community and there's a lot of pain, that people go through. You go through a lot when you're trying to build a business. Like, I mean, if you want to, start a startup, you're not gonna come out the same way you went in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
for better or worse, I think it changes you fundamentally as a human being.
Yeah. But why put yourself through it? Why be because you're part of accelerators, right? So you'd see things go well, but you'd see a lot of things not go so well. I'm assuming. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, jeez, I could tell you stories, man. I could tell you stories.
Yeah. So what keeps you, I suppose, optimistic?
Yeah. Okay. What keeps me optimistic? Optimistic.
Because you need a boatload of it.
Yeah. When I see the passion from a lot of the other startups and founders, that is something that, I don't know, keeps the light burning for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about just stuff? This is too hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Weekly.
But yeah. Hourly.
Yeah.
But then I realized, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
And
that's a good question.
Yeah. And then I just go, no, I'd rather eat ramen noodles. And just persevere with the pain and have this blue sky potential, Yeah.
You can't say it's boring.
It is absolutely not boring. If I'll give you a rundown of my day today.
Right.
I got up. I was running a grant application about artificial intelligence for the government. Yep. Then I had a meeting with Suncorp talking about innovation and startups. And then 2:00 in the afternoon, all my developers came online. So I was running 3 businesses at the same time off my smartphone before I came here doing a podcast.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my day, all day, every day.
Yeah.
So I'm loving it.
Yeah. Glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. Things just happen when you're part of this community, though, right? Like, I mean, I was lucky enough to get invited along to Domino's launch, of their D Lab. I mean, with Don May was in the room, and
Leanne Enoch?
Yeah. So
awesome.
Members of Parliament, and me, and I'm in there, and you just think, wow, like this is pretty cool awesome to be part of this. You just end up in all these situations where
you wouldn't otherwise ordinarily end up.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It happens all the time, and it's an amazing experience and a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
And I would highly encourage everyone to do that as much as humanly possible. Just continually and consistently punch above your weight, because you do not know which room you are going to end up with and who with, and they will open doors that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just I want to say fake it until you become it. You know?
Yeah.
Just get out there and smash it.
That proximity is really power, isn't it? I mean, last week I got to go along to an event with Philip DeBella talking, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Just in
the coffee
yeah,
guy, right?
yeah. He founded DeBella. I mean, if I had have looked, 5 years ago, I would have just, you're not going to be doing that type of thing. But
Right.
you do get to hang out with these people who are way above your pay grade, and
Absolutely.
and they're happy to talk to you. They're happy to help. Which if you didn't get to know them and get to become part of the scene, you wouldn't really know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a really quick example. A mate of mine sent me a link about how Right Click Capital is partnering with Tim Draper. And for those who don't know, Tim Draper is an iconic tech billionaire out of the Valley. Right? And I'm like, and they are actively looking for Australian startups to invest in. And I'm like, I'm building something that might, that they might find actually quite beneficial. So I tap my network and I'm like, who do I know that can get me an introduction into the CEO of Right Click Capital down in Sydney? Boom, introduction.
Done. Yeah.
And he's like, and he emailed me a day later and goes, give me a slide deck. I'm like, okay, cool. The next thing is, there's a guy out of San Fran. I'll cut the story short, but at the end of that conversation that we had, I'm like, can you get me in front of Tim Draper? And he goes, send me a slide deck. I'll see what I can do. It's that kind of stuff that you shouldn't be scared of, and you should just get out there and do it. Yeah, you just don't know the possibility, that lies in front of you in the startup ecosystem.
Yeah, so good for personal growth. I mean, I think that for me personally, I stopped putting people on a pedestal too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you do get to meet the people you see on TV, or all these type of the millionaires and the big investors and that type of thing, and they're just sort of, you just realize they're people too.
They are just people. They are just people. Yeah. And I think there's a big problem in the startup ecosystem with this whole pedestal thing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's what you're doing is you're hedging your bets as an entrepreneur that you are going to put in 5 years seriously hard work and exit at a multiple of 10 plus versus the alternative, which is going to work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday for somebody else. It shouldn't. Entrepreneurship is a different career choice. It is a career. It isn't some maverick, shoot from the hip. You're an amazing rock star kind of mentality. That should not be propagated through the startup ecosystem at all. At all. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. So good. All right. So we have to talk about your new project.
Oh,
Merakium.
Okay. Merakium.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
What is it?
Merakium.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is it's a two-sided platform.
Yep.
The problem that I'm trying to solve in the startup ecosystem is access to early stage capital.
Yep.
As I mentioned before.
Yep.
So
what is early stage capital? Like, are we capping the amount of funding you'd be chasing?
So typically we're looking at angel and seed kind of stuff, Series A.
Right.
So early stage venture capital kind of stuff.
Yep.
Typically. Once a startup has raised that amount of money and they're doing well, they don't need to go and raise capital outside of the ecosystem like they did at the very beginning, which is sort of wearing out, shoe leather and knocking on doors. They'll just go back to their original investor and say, "Who do you know? Can I have some more money?"
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
typically I'm playing in that very early stage.
Right. And how much money are those type of people typically looking to raise? What's the range?
Angel investors, typically about the numbers that I've heard right now in my immediate circle is about 300,000. Yeah, give or take a couple grand here and there.
Yep.
I've heard up to 750, but I think that was early stage VC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I thought VC was more sort of your early millions.
Yeah.
Yep.
It really depends on who you talk to.
Yep.
Yeah. Because you can get I won't name names, but you can see there are a couple of VCs out there that will do pre-revenue, pre-customer.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. On a really, really good tech idea, but it would have to be pretty freaking stellar, and you need a pretty stellar team behind it as well. So they'll come right down the scale.
Okay.
On the inverse of that, you've got again, I won't name the actual product, but there was a syndication that happened between a bunch of VCs and a syndicate of angels, and that actually went to, I think, plus well over 1 mil.
Right. Okay.
In the first raise.
Yep.
So there's extremes on both sides.
Right. Gotcha. And we're talking about Australia specifically here too. Like just as a side note, I mean, Angel in America can go way higher than that.
Oh my god. Yeah. I bumped into a VC about a month back, maybe 2 months back, and he said, he's typical like early stuff, like he's 1.5.
Right.
Yeah, they won't even blink at that.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So and to be clear, angel investing, for those listening, is typically someone spending their own money.
Yep, absolutely.
And VC venture capital is they're spending other people's money.
Exactly. So typically there's a lot of institutions behind VCs, or a lot of high net worth individuals, corporates, behind there. Yep.
Right, yeah. It's very... I love hearing the stories about how people approach investors, because there's so many howlers,
There's so many what, sorry?
Howlers. There's so many terrible approaches you hear of, like, cold emailing, can I have 200K seed funding? Here's my bank account. Cheers, mate.
Best of luck with that.
Yeah. So this is a problem you're solving with Merakium.
Absolutely.
Why do people struggle so much with it?
Wow. So now, okay, I will happily share some of the insights that I have gained. So why do people struggle with it so much? This is the basic thing that happens from a startup's point of view. So they have an idea, they start building it, they fund it through friends, family, fools. That's credit cards and all the rest of it.
Yep.
Beg, borrow, steal where they can.
Yep.
They get it launched. They start getting some customers, start getting traction, and realize that they're going to need a lick of capital, 500 a mil, 1.5, whatever, and they're like, oh, we need to go and raise money. How do we do that? And they have no idea, no idea. So they read a couple of blogs, blah, 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 try to self-educate, but they don't know anyone in the ecosystem. They are not, these people typically aren't part of the startup ecosystem. So they just start cold calling blind, like knocking on doors.
Wow, yep.
And it's only through the fact that during that 6 to 9 to 12 to 18 month process, that they keep on knocking on doors, that somebody in their network hears something or knows someone who plays golf with someone who would really like that idea. They sit down and have a conversation with them, and the next thing you know, they've got their money. That's typically how it works. The whole sort of shoe leather knocking on doors thing is
don't bother.
It's an approach.
Yep.
But
But would that time be better spent put into going to networking events and not even asking for anything, just getting to know people? Just spend 6 months just getting to know people.
So that's this. So the deeper level of insight that I've uncovered.
Yep.
It's this serendipitous meeting of people in the startup ecosystem that gets you the money you need from the right person at the right time. Yep. So in part, what I'm doing with Merakium is trying to actually use some seriously sophisticated artificial intelligence and predictive analytics to actually map and measure the non-business relationships within the startup ecosystem.
Wow.
So to basically increase the probability of that serendipitous occurrence.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah. So imagine if you could look out through your, hypothetically, your LinkedIn network and you like walking dogs on Sundays, right?
Yep.
And then you can see an investor you know exactly what they want to invest in, when they're investing, who they're connected to, all of that kind of stuff. And by the way, they're like walking dogs as well, you know. And all you need is an introduction. So you tap that network, say, can I please get an introduction? You know, I'd like to, you know, spend half an hour with this guy walking dogs and shooting the breeze. You know,
I suppose you got to be careful not to be too parasitic though as well. Like if I mean, it's not very, it's not looked upon as very, it's not looked upon favourably for you to come into the ecosystem and be making demands left, right, and centre.
That is a really, really bad idea. Yep. And that's why the startup ecosystem is designed the way it is. There are a lot of gatekeepers. Me being one of them, and it's an unfortunate thing. But the relationships that I have are incredibly valuable to me and to them. So there is no way that I would put those relationships in jeopardy for, you know, the sake of somebody else. It's just like, no, you've got to have some pretty serious street cred. So
because they've got to respect the fact that you're making the introduction too. They've got to, you know, it's got to be a well thought out, you know, ask. You can't just go, hey Trez, I've got an idea. Know some investors. You know,
I get that from time to time, and I'm just like, you know what? Sorry, I don't. But sometimes I help them out. You know, sometimes there's a gap, and I'm like, you know what? You need to go back to the drawing board. And if you do come back and you've actually listened to what I've said, then, you know, I'm happy to, you know, make the introduction, but not otherwise.
And in all honesty, how often does that happen? How often does someone go away and go, I've listened to what you said, I've implemented it, here's the proof? I want you to say all the time, but I know it's not going to be that.
Do you know, there is going back to what we were talking about earlier, there is a significant gap in education. And so when people actually hear what I say, they don't quite get it. You know, when they go and write a business plan and then think that they're going to go into stealth mode, and I'm like, no, you need to lean startup and you need to do this and this and this. And if you do this and come back to me, I will make the introduction, or I will provide this or provide that. They just look at me like with a blank face and go, you don't know what you're talking about. Obviously you've misheard me, or you don't understand, or you don't understand how brilliant my idea is.
Yeah, it's so good, Trez.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. I'm like, tell me about the problem you're solving again. And then they just go off, and I never hear from them again. You know, and
you'd be able to pick that just straight away.
That whole interaction is all I need to know. That tells me that they're not ready to you know, play on my field.
Right. Yeah. So going back to the challenges that Merakium's addressing, you're talking about it's going to be help investors as well.
Absolutely.
I find that really interesting because so they have. I imagine investors, particularly in Australia, to be just absolutely inundated with people wanting their money. They can't be short of opportunities, surely.
Good opportunities.
Okay.
Good opportunities. That's the problem at hand. Right? So it's not just So it's about deal flow. It's about follow-on funding. It's about the right market. It's about the right team. It's about due diligence. It's about actually the legwork that's required to get the deal over the line.
Right.
And depending on which type of investor you speak to will depend on the specific pain points that they're suffering. Typically, angel investors, they don't have enough bandwidth to look at all of the deals that come across their desk.
Okay.
And they don't have enough bandwidth to do all the due diligence themselves. So they don't have like a massive amount of money. I mean, that's why they're playing in the angel space. So they want to diversify their risk by the portfolio management strategy and syndication. So they need a really solid network of trusted investors. So that's some of their pain points.
Sure.
If you go further up the scale, you know, you want follow-on funding is typically a problem for for a lot of investors, and a visible exit strategy is being something that's that is not even thought of, like 99% of the time.
Okay.
But as an institutional investor, you want to know how much money you want.
Yeah. How am I going to get back?
How much I'm going to. Yeah. And you know, what are you going to spend it on? Yeah. You know, so they want a clear exit strategy, and people are like, I'm going to build a nest next this, and nah.
Yeah. Fair enough. It's so interesting because I have this vision. I don't know that many investors myself. I don't know why I get this impression, but I just assume there's hardly any around. Is that accurate?
No. They are everywhere.
Right.
And there is so much money at the moment in Australia. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. You just need to know where to look and who to speak to.
Yeah. That's really useful to know.
Yeah. It's stupid.
Yeah.
The amount of money out there.
Yeah.
But you just got to be careful about what type of money. You know, there's typically what's referred to as sophisticated and unsophisticated money, and with that money comes a price. Right? You can get the unsophisticated money. But you're probably not gonna get the network that you need to to accelerate your business growth the way you need to. Right. The sophisticated money is probably typically going to bring a board director and a massive, significant network in your specific niche, who is going to help you any single way they can to accelerate your business. Get a 10x in 3 to 5 is typically what they want, and then exit. Right? It's in everyone's best interest that happens. Right. Yeah. They're the kind of guys you want.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting, because I think a lot of people just look at the money.
No. But money's 50% of the that problem. The network and the guys that you're actually hooking yourself to, that's of equal importance. Probably more.
More. Yeah.
Interesting. Like I said, there's a bucket of money out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so cool to know.
Yeah.
We'll have to wrap it up in a second, but you can. Where's some places we can find you if we want to follow up? Merakium is merakium.co. Yep. What I really like about Merakium, actually, I should mention a bit more about it, but I had a little look at it myself, and it's basically a high level overview of everything that you should be focusing on in your startup, really, isn't it?
That is exactly what it is. Yeah. I am digitizing myself and everything that I know about the startup ecosystem, and giving all the startups all the tools that they need to build their startup in a sophisticated way, so that they are investable when it comes time to have that conversation. And from the other side, it gives investors the opportunity to look at exactly the right startup as soon as they hit the platform, and watch that startup's journey right the way through. So when it comes time to have that conversation, I need $500,000 for 20%. It's a really, really easy conversation to have.
They've been watching you the whole time.
Exactly. And they can help you out. And there's a heap of other stuff in there, but that's typically what I'm trying to do.
Cool. And we can find that at merakium.co. So merakium.co.
Yep, that's
is
it.
The way.
I'm like, is that right? Yeah.
I do my research, Trez.
Yeah, excellent.
But yeah, thanks for being on this episode of the Be the Push podcast. We really appreciate it. Anywhere else we can find you if we wanted to reach out, ask questions, whatnot? Are you on the Twitter sphere?
Yeah, but I've got so much social media going on at the moment. The best place to reach right now would be Merakium. So T West at merakium.co.
Brilliant. Yeah. Awesome. Trez, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
So thanks for listening to this episode of the Be The Push podcast. You can find all the show notes at bethepush.com/podcast. I appreciate your company, and I hope to talk to you soon.